Hi, I'm Karen Summers, and I am located in Bellevue, Washington. Liz Wessel, with whom I'm speaking today, is one of my colleagues in Providence Home and Community Care, the best division in all of Providence St. Joseph Health.
What brought you to Providence?
This coming May, it will be my 31st year with Providence. And what brought me to Providence was I had been a stay-at-home mom for over 20 years, raising 4 children. So I had been home for 20 years. I didn't have much work experience. I was also completing my bachelor's degree at Seattle University. So I was looking for an internship. I felt like I needed to get some kind of work experience. So Providence Seattle Medical Center had an internship in human resources. It was called personnel at the time. So this is back in the 90s. So I marched myself up the hill. It was just about 2 blocks away. I interviewed with the director of personnel and it was offered to me. And generally, when you participate in these internships, they're generally just for a quarter. But I loved it so much and they seemed to like me that I stayed for 2 quarters. And then after that was completed, it turns out they had a need for someone to fill a temporary position in personnel. So I assumed those responsibilities, and then it worked into what they called a generalist position. In that role, you did everything. Now, HR is so specialized. Back then, you placed the ads for the open positions. You had certain departments you had responsibility for in the hospital. And I also had primary care clinics as well. So you placed the ads, you did the interviewing, forwarded them to the manager, you did employee relations. You know, it was a pretty comprehensive role and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. Once I was hired into the position and attended orientation and heard about the mission and saw it being lived out, I knew I was where I was meant to be. And I never looked at another employment ad in these past 31 years.
And I think you really, during your internship, and not only 1, but 2, you obviously were shining and they could see your potential and wanted to help bring that about for you.
So I spent about 5 years at Providence Seattle Medical Center. And then Providence Seattle formed a joint venture with the Franciscan Health System and formed a startup organization called Medallia. And it basically was taking the primary care clinics that Providence Seattle had and the Franciscans had theirs. We came together and then we grew them. So we grew from like 11 primary care clinics to 50 within like 2 years. So I transitioned from Providence Seattle in an HR role as a generalist. At Medallia, they hired a VP of HR, and really within a very short period of time, that HR vice president said to me she wanted to offer me the manager position for HR. So again, it was someone seeing potential in me. I never applied for anything. I wasn't asking for these promotional opportunities. This was something that vice president saw in me. So I accepted it, and then I spent about 3 years there, and then I transitioned back to Providence, Seattle to work in the role of missions. I accepted immediately. Even without knowing what a person in that role did. So I came back to Providence Seattle Medical Center, and I've been in a mission role for now about 22 years. But when I had started at Providence Seattle, I mentioned that I needed a job, and I was going through a very difficult financial time. So needed every penny in my paycheck. And so I was supposed to go out to the Monroe Clinic, and it was pouring rain, as it often does in Seattle, and my tires were bald in my car. And I just felt it was such a great distance to go with bald tires, a lot of freeway driving. So I called the managers to say, I just didn't feel safe doing it, that I wouldn't be coming out that day, but I'd reschedule time to visit them in a future date. And that's all the information I gave them. I never really kind of shared much about my personal situation. I didn't say I'm flat broke, returning to work. So anyway, the next time I went to visit the clinic, it was a pretty good sized clinic. The managers handed me this envelope and they told me that they had put on a potluck lunch and asked the caregivers to donate what they would spend on lunch to support someone who helps support them in their work. So they never said my name, never said it's our HR person. They just said, this is someone who supports us, who has a need, and whatever donations they could make. So the day that I went for that visit, the managers handed me this envelope with $400 in it so I could buy new tires. I will never, ever forget that. Of course, I was reduced to tears. It was not any kind of an expectation on my part that I would get help. You might expect your family to help you or your close friends who are very familiar with your situation and might reach out to you. To have this happen with people who, it's not even like I worked with them every day. I mean, I was so moved by that gesture, and not only for receiving the gift of the cash donation, but their effort to protect my confidentiality.
Karen, I do think it is a modern day, Good Samaritan story, and it is beautiful. I find myself feeling emotional just hearing you recount that.
But those stories, as you know, Liz, happen every day in Providence. Yes, we are wonderfully loving, caring, and supportive of those who come to us for care, but this is our culture.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering, as we close, is there anything else that you feel you would like to share today? Or
I hope I didn't bore people going on and on about Providence, but it has been such a significant part of my life and has helped shape me more fully into becoming the person I really long to be.
Yes, I think we're all living into the people we hope to be, to bring healing and love into our world.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Karen.
Liz.